chemo and operations and bone marrow transplant. I had a rough time.
If anybody ever had a testimony, you do.
I've been there.
Yeah.
That was a rough time. That's why I got there's no
Start a meeting.
Wow. Okay.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Tuesday, June the 29th agenda session. I now call this meeting to order. Could I get a motion on the minutes, please?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve, and with no objections, the minutes will stand as recorded. If you will look, council, in your packet, we do have a Parks and Public Works and Economic Development Committee meeting this afternoon, and I have talked to both chairpersons, and we are going to move Economic Development first, and we will have Parks and Public Works second. So be prepared for that. Moving to ordinances on final reading, we do have one under 5A. Are there any questions or comments concerning the alternate version on our finance amendment to the budget? Any questions or comments on that? If not, we're going to move into resolutions for this afternoon. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read 7A.
A resolution to repeal resolution number 29142 adopted on August 8, 2017, and adopting new rules of operation for the Chattanooga City Council.
Okay, Madam Attorney, I did notice one, I think, item that needs to be corrected that we had addressed maybe a couple of years ago. Roman numeral 3C7E. It says chairperson shall not recognize any person's neighborhood association or organization to speak to the council during the non-agenda matters portion of the agenda more than twice in any 30-day period. I believe that had been removed previously and should not be in there. So if we could make that change before our 6 o'clock meeting. Is there anything else that questions or comments about our rules of procedure? Councilwoman Hill.
Chair, you and I had discussed the possibility of removing the meeting times from that document as well. Has that been removed in this version?
That is correct. Council, if you'll notice the meeting times, it gives our strategic planning, I think, at 1:30, and then our agenda session at 3. I think we just do away with the meeting times altogether and just have the days or the meetings that we have. And then we'll just consent of the council on what time. Is council good with that?
Yeah, that works for me. The thought process had been just that it doesn't, we as a council decide on times for different meetings. And so if we take that out of this official document, we won't have to have resolutions to change it
Right. Yeah.
regularly.
We'll just take
That's-
the times out of the meeting times.
We will still satisfy the notice requirements through the agenda process.
Yes. You good, Councilwoman? Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments on rules of operation for the council? Seeing none, we'll move to information technology. Madam Clerk, 7D, please.
A resolution authorizing the Department of Information Technology's Chief Information Officer to renew the existing blanket agreement PO number 554187 with BG Staffing Inc. for 12 additional months beginning May 29, 2021 and ending May 28, 2022. The second renewal of 2 optional renewals for an amount not to exceed 1.1 million each.
Any questions or comments? 7E, please.
A resolution authorizing the Department of Information Technology's Chief Information Officer to extend the existing blanket agreement PO number 551492 with Data Driven LLC for 12 additional months beginning July 1, 2021 and ending July 30, 2022 with an annual spend limit not to exceed $90,000.
I'm still seeing no hands. F, please.
A resolution authorizing the Department of Information Technology's Chief Information Officer to renew the city's contract 549256 with Smart Homes, Inc., doing business as Smart Systems as providers of systems automation and technology installation services for 1 additional year beginning May 16, 2021 through May 15, 2022, for an amount not to exceed $250,000 per contract year.
Any questions or comments? G, please.
A resolution authorizing the Department of Information Technology's Chief Information Officer to renew the city's contract 554393 with New Origin Systems, Inc. as providers of geospatial systems, GIS fields, and mobile applications maintenance and support for the water quality program for one additional year, beginning June 17, 2021 through June 16, 2022, for an amount not to exceed $40,000 per contract year.
I'm still seeing no hands. Y'all are an easy crowd today. 7H.
A resolution authorizing the Office of the City Attorney to renew purchase contract number 548221 with Arthur J. Gallagher Risk Management Services, Inc. for an insurance brokerage services, athletic liability, commercial auto, out-of-state auto, public official bonds, Head Start Auto for the third of three 12-month renewal term options for an amount not to exceed $125,385.
Okay, I'm still seeing no hands. 7I, please.
A resolution authorizing the fire chief to extend the supplemental fire services agreement with Tri-Community Volunteer Fire Department, Inc. for a 3-year term period ending June 30, 2024 for the continued fire protection of the annexed Ottawa area referenced in ordinance number 10966 to be paid in quarterly increments subject to an annual increase of 5% for a total amount of $454,257.
All right, seeing no hands. K, please.
A resolution authorizing the chief of police to apply for, and if awarded, accept a fiscal year 2021 Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act grant through the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services to assist and develop a peer support team used for officers' resilient training, family resources, suicide prevention, crisis intervention training, and technology resources for a grant period beginning October 1, 2021, and ending September 30, 2023, for an amount not to exceed $134,360.
Any questions or comments? All right, the last one, please.
A resolution authorizing the chief of police to reimburse the Hamilton County 911 for Police Services Center security upgrade to include access control reader, plus cards, and fire alarm upgrade for a one-time reimbursement for an amount not to exceed $60,000.
All right, council, that concludes our agenda items. If you would pull out your purchase items for this afternoon and let me know if you have any questions or comments concerning your purchase items. Chief, it's my understanding that we do have a couple of RFPs that we need to approve tonight. Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chair. The non-congregate shelter for vulnerable homeless with underlying medical conditions, there's a small addition to this contract. But as these continue to come across my desk, I am at the same time getting very concerned phone calls from constituents about the growing number of homeless people in our city, the conditions in which they live. And I know that we've had some conversations about this, and this administration has many competing priorities, but it's definitely time for us to make it a top of the list item to really look at what's the Kelly administration's plan going to be for this, and how do our nonprofit partners fit into that. And we've gotten some stuff recently from the Homeless Coalition, and I have constituents who are just genuinely upset, not only with the way it makes our city look, but honestly, most importantly, with the reality that there are people that are living in such conditions.
We absolutely share your concern, Councilwoman Hill. I'd be happy to schedule a committee here, a presentation with our Office of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, which is headed up by Sam Wolf, who previously ran our Homeless Services Division. And we've been having a number of discussions every single week about that exact topic. And so I'd be happy to get a presentation booked. And so that way we can talk about that at length.
I think that could be really useful for all of us. Chair, is that something that we could work into one of our agendas for the next month or so?
Would you like to see it in strategic planning or under departmental report at 3:30?
Strategic planning would be great. That way we could talk about it more.
Awesome. Be happy to do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you make a note for me to address this in strategic planning? Thank you. All right, any other questions concerning our purchase items this afternoon? If not, moving to our first meeting in July, council, you have in your packet the agenda for July the 6th. Is there anything on this agenda that you would like to address at this time? I'm seeing no hands, so if you would look at your future considerations. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I pressed it right before we got here. When are you looking? That's the strategic planning meeting, right?
Yes, for the,
Okay, there has been a lot of talk about enforcing panhandling in Chattanooga, online chatter. This is different from homeless.
okay.
How are we planning to address that? I know my colleagues have gotten calls about it. What's your pleasure?
Well, I think that is something that, if my memory serves me correct, that we were going to talk about in strategic planning. I thought we had taken that off, removed that.
We removed it because what we were going to talk about, we were talking about the strategic planning law. And we came to the realization that it's not more law we need, it's enforcement of existing law we need. And so the issue was going to be across the board enforcement of ordinances that the city council passes.
Well, you tell me how you would like to see it. Would you like to have this discussion in a strategic planning meeting with the police chief and the chief of staff? Is it? I'm seeing a nod by Councilman Ledford.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
please.
Madam Clerk, would you make that note as well, please? And we will address that. We don't have a meeting on July the 20th, but I think following that we do, so that would give us time to get these individuals lined up. You good, Councilwoman?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hill.
Chair, I'm going to be away that week following the 20th, so I'd prefer if that not be the week that we talk about homelessness.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we will have a strategic.
We can talk about it later.
Yeah, let me look at that. We'll see
Okay.
what we can figure out. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. May I suggest for our panhandling ordinance, the city attorney make sure that we get a copy of the panhandling ordinance sent to us prior to, so that we can have that at our ready. That'd be great. Thank you.
If you'll just make sure that our clerk has that, they can put it in our boxes for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments concerning future considerations? Anything on future considerations that you need to bring to our attention at this time? If not, we will now go into our committees, and we will start with economic development. And at this time, I will turn the chair over to Councilwoman Coonrod.
And
Can I get approval of the minutes? Go to my page. Clerk, if you'll read resolutions. F and B.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 14, Article 2, Division 3, Section 1475, application for examination required, context and qualifications, and Section 1481, licenses and certificates required, and Chapter 24, Article 1, Section 24.1, in general definitions, intelligent transportation system.
No questions. C, please. You will read C. 7C.
Let me read economic development and not public works. Sorry. Glad everyone is paying attention. Wow. A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a first agreement to exercise option to renew with Chattanooga Flying Disc Club, Inc. in substantially the form attached for disc golf course, city public parks for daily use and tournament play for an additional term of 1 year for the term through June 30, 2022.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Jermaine, when we do these contracts, like in District 4, we have the radio control. Is there a way to do these contracts a little bit longer than having them recirculate every year, maybe on a 2 or 3 year cycle? Is there a way to maybe look at that so it would help for strategic planning for the groups as well, if they want to go out maybe a little bit further?
Yeah, I think so. Let me turn that question over to Tony.
It's fine. You can get with me
Yeah.
offline. I just saw this and it reminded me of that, and I
Okay.
think it's something maybe we could look into.
Okay,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thanks. Any other questions? 7C.
A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a conservation services agreement for 2021-2022 with the Trust for Public Land and substantially the form attached for a term of 1 year from July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022 for an amount not to exceed $100,000 to be paid in 4 quarterly installments of $25,000.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, it's my understanding that we need to defer this item. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. TPL requested that we defer this to July 6th.
July the 6th? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Council,
you.
if you'd make a note for tonight at 6, we do need to defer for July the 6th. Thank you, Madam Clerk, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a 6th amendment to lease agreement with East Anuga LLC and substantially the form attached for senior activity meeting space in a portion of Eastgate Town Center located at 5600 Brainerd Road for an additional term of 1 year for the amount of $7,259.74 per month for a total amount of $87,116.88 per year.
B, please.
A resolution declaring surplus of the property located at 332 East Martin Luther King Boulevard and further identified as tax parcel number 145ED009.
No questions. All right, thank you, clerk. Now we're about to head to the proposed pilot. Is Jermaine or who's gonna?
Good afternoon, Council. Jermaine Freeman, Economic Development. So today you have a proposed pilot that is going to come before you that we will be presenting on. Today I am joined by Mr. Charles Wood from the Chattanooga Area Chamber of Commerce, as well as representatives from the company, Pure Graphite LLC and Novonix. So they will be talking more about the project once we get to that point in the presentation. Because we have several new members of the city council, I also thought that it would be helpful for us to have a pilot refresher beforehand so that people had a chance to understand exactly what a pilot is, what it isn't, and how they have an economic impact for our community. So what is a pilot? A pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes, which means that essentially what companies receive when they apply for a pilot is they receive an alternative structure to pay revenue to the city. Typically what we do is we abate property taxes in a pilot so that there is a reduction in the amount of property taxes that a company that is a pilot recipient is paying. It doesn't mean that the company doesn't pay any taxes. The company is paying taxes, but they are paying a reduced amount of taxes. There are other ways to incentivize projects. You don't have to give pilots. Communities don't have to do pilots. Communities can give, in many communities, communities will give cash for different, in terms of an incentive. Communities may also provide real estate as an incentive, which we'll talk about later. Communities may also do workforce training as an incentive. But a pilot, a payment in lieu of tax, is actually one of the more safer forms of doing an incentive to a company because it does not require a cash outlay upfront from the city. It also doesn't require that a city give up valuable real estate that it prefers to keep. We have two different types of pilots here in the city. We have economic development pilots, which we also call jobs pilots for short, which provide a payment in lieu of tax agreement to a company for the creation of jobs and for a certain amount of capital investment. We also do pilots for affordable housing projects. These pilots abate property taxes for real estate developers who are developing affordable housing in our city in accordance with our affordable housing guidelines. The affordable housing pilot program is, as I said, is designed to encourage the development of more affordable housing for people who qualify, for people who meet a certain threshold when it comes to low to moderate income, and those pilots have to move through our housing, through our Health, Education, and Housing Facilities Board, better known as the HEB, in order for final approval. Economic development pilots, these are pilots that are designed for companies, again, for meeting certain capital investment thresholds and for creating jobs and for creating those jobs with certain wages. Economic development pilots do not move through the HEB. If they are approved by City Council, they move through the IDB, which is the Industrial Development Board of Chattanooga. By law, this is the method by which cities must give tax abatements, is they must use the Industrial Development Board by state law in order to approve pilots. The same goes for the housing pilots. Those have to move through the HEB after approval by City Council. All of these pilots have to meet what's called the but-for test, meaning that but for the incentive, the project would not happen. One of the things that you will see as you read through the housing pilot guidelines is that housing pilots cannot be granted to developments that have already started work. So therefore, the assumption is that if the work has already started or if the construction has already started, then the project was going to move forward anyway, and therefore there's no need of a pilot. So economic development pilots, here is sort of the process for how pilots are approved and how they come to us. Companies will reach out to either the chamber, or they will reach out directly to the city, or they will reach out to the county, or they will reach out to our state officials at the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, or they will reach out to our utility partners to express interest in an expansion here in Tennessee. This can happen both from companies that are not currently located in Tennessee, but it can also happen from companies that are already here in Tennessee that may start by reaching out to one of the entities that you see on the screen to indicate that they are interested in an expansion. However, they are typically looking at multiple locations for the expansion, and they have a question about incentives. We also get companies that are interested in expanding from TVA. So TVA has an economic development arm that works in conjunction and in coordination with the state, as well as with our local partners. to guide economic development projects to our communities. The chamber then evaluates the request on behalf of the city and county. That is part of the responsibility that goes along with the annual appropriation that we give to the chamber. Companies that are not recommended for pilots are communicated with privately. So all that means is that if we say no, or if the chamber says no, we don't put everybody on blast. Okay, we communicate with the company in private. Our job here is not to embarrass the company. Companies are going to ask for incentives. That's just part of how companies do business. But we want to make sure that we let the company know and maintain discretion if we choose to deny a pilot. When the chamber does recommend a company for a pilot, that recommendation must then also receive support from both mayors. So both Mayor Kelly as well as Mayor Coppinger. For the past several years, both the city and county have had a partnership in that we typically approve pilots together for the benefit of companies and for the benefit of the people of Chattanooga and Hamilton County. And both the city and chamber work together to determine whether or not a project has met the but-for requirement. If both mayors approve and the company decides on Chattanooga, then final approval is sought from City Council, the County Commission, and then the Industrial Development Board. And again, that can be either the City of Chattanooga's Industrial Development Board, which we try to use for pilots for companies that are in Chattanooga, but then the county also has its own Industrial Development Board for the approval of pilots that are outside of Chattanooga. This is the structure of a pilot. So you ask, what exactly is a pilot? What does that mean? So essentially, and this structure has been agreed upon now for several years between the city and the county. So in year one of a pilot, a company does not pay any of their property taxes. They do not pay, they pay 0%. In year two, their pilot payment is such that a company pays what is equal to 25% of the property taxes that they would have normally owed. In year three of the pilot, companies pay for 40% of the property taxes that they would have normally owed. And then in years 4 and above, companies pay for 50% of the property taxes that they would have owed. Companies are always required, and it has been a standard here for several years, that all taxes that would be owed to the Hamilton County Department of Education to support the school system, that those taxes are not abated. So companies continue to pay the taxes that support the school system. In addition to the amounts listed above, or to the percentages listed above, both the city of Chattanooga and Hamilton County also has what is called an economic development lease payment, which is on top of the pilot payment. So for the city of Chattanooga, that lease payment that gets paid to the IDB is approximately 15% of what the property taxes would have been. For the county, it's 12.53%. These are some of the existing job pilots that we have that are currently active. So you will see a number of companies up here that you will recognize. Amazon, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Coca-Cola Bottling United, Gestamp, HomeServe. This is a great chart because one of the things that it highlights is it also highlights the amount of foreign investment that has started to come into Chattanooga. If we want to have a world-class city, world-class cities have world-class companies that come into their cities to make investments and create jobs. HomeServe, for example, is based in the United Kingdom. Gestamp is based in Spain. If we go to the next screen, Plastic Omnium is based in France. Volkswagen is German. Yanfeng is based in China. All of these companies have come here and chosen Chattanooga for different reasons and for different strategic purposes to create jobs and to create capital investment. These are, well, let me go back to this screen for just a second. So there are a number, there is a tremendous amount of capital investment that has come in just from the active pilots that we currently have. They account for over $1.5 billion worth of capital investment, and they account for over 9,000 jobs. So it is a significant amount of investment, and that does not include the additional investment that comes from some companies that are in the automotive supplier park around Volkswagen that did not receive pilots, but they came to Chattanooga because of the presence of Volkswagen here in Chattanooga. In addition to the pilots that we typically have for the jobs pilots, we also have 2 other active pilots that people often forget about. Several years ago, the city, of course, entered into a pilot arrangement for the creation of the Majestic 12 Theater. That was, of course, at this point, a long time ago when we were trying to generate more activity and more development and investment downtown. And then by state law, pilots can also be used for parking facilities. And so we also have an active pilot for Unum for a parking structure. Recently expired pilots include Westinghouse Electric, CBL and EMJ, and Vandeweil. And then we have Nippon Paint. So a lot of times people forget that Nippon didn't actually receive a pilot from the city. Instead of a pilot, what we chose to do, to go back to the point that I made earlier about real estate, is we incentivized Nippon, which is based in Japan, so another example of foreign direct investment. We incentivized Nippon to come to Chattanooga because we were able to donate 29 acres of the former Harriet Tubman site, which was valued at $1.1 million, in exchange for the commitment to invest $59 million and to create 150 full-time jobs. Just some of the additional benefits of economic development projects, and this is some of the added benefits of doing pilots, is that we can target certain types of industries that we want to see created here in Chattanooga and that we want to see growing. All right, we have been able to successfully create a good automotive cluster around Volkswagen because of the fact that we have been very strategic in terms of how we've done pilots with automotive companies, including Volkswagen, and with some of the suppliers. The pilots can also be used to help with economic development projects that will provide urban infill, or that can serve as big anchor tenants, or projects that are also going to make the most of underutilized and vacant and abandoned property. And then just as a side note, the revenue that comes in from payments in lieu of taxes that goes to the Industrial Development Board has also funded and helped us to fund small business development programs. So the grants and small business loans that we have been able to do over the course of the past few years, including much of the revenue that was used to support businesses that were impacted by COVID-19, that was money that we had at the Industrial Development Board because pilot recipients had paid into a fund at the Industrial Development Board with their economic development lease payments. That money we were able to then use to support small businesses that were impacted by the executive orders of last year that forced shutdowns of small businesses. Some of the goals of the Kelly administration as we look forward are we want to create more opportunities for transparency around pilot projects. We do realize that some people do have sort of a misperception of what pilots are and how they work. And so we want to make sure that we can sort of outline a process whereby we can make that process more transparent. That includes trying to include community benefits language in our pilot agreements. This pilot agreement that we have today for Pure Graphite, it does include language that speak to best faith efforts to create talent pipelines and to create opportunities for local suppliers and contractors to work with construction work, to work with the construction team. We also will continue to use revenue from pilot payments to fuel small business growth. And because we want to make sure that our local economy benefits all of our small businesses as well. Let me go back for just a second. I want to just make a couple of further points. One, we have not approved a pilot before City Council for the past 2 years. So these don't come along that often. And you know, we could talk about that because one of the things that we must understand as a city is that we should be getting asked for incentives. That is part of the process. If we're not being asked for incentives, then that spells more trouble because it means that Chattanooga isn't necessarily on people's radar. And so even if we're saying no, we do have to expect that companies will ask. And the more we are being asked for incentives, the more we know that people are interested in coming to Chattanooga and making investments in Chattanooga. There have only been 3 economic development pilots before the city council in the past 4 years. And then it is also important to know that as we work with the state has made it very clear in their conversations with local communities that if and when they incentivize projects, they do often wonder if the local communities will also incentivize projects to accompany the incentive that they provide. And so today, which is what Charles is about to discuss, is we have a project, Pure Graphite. We are recommending this project. As a side note, one of the things that we will also start doing, and which I emailed to you all earlier, is including a staff memo that basically outlines and explicitly states a summary of what the pilot agreement is and what the company will receive and what the economic benefit is to the city. We will start to include those in every pilot agreement going forward. This project has an estimated economic impact over 12 years of $400 million. That impact is largely driven by the wages that will be paid that go into our local economy from the jobs that will be created, as well as the indirect jobs that will also be created from the scale of the project over a 12-year period. We will abate approximately $2.7 million, and Pure Graphite will pay all school taxes and stormwater fees. And so with that, I will turn it over to Charles to take us the next step of the way.
Thanks, Jermaine. Before I kind of introduce the project and go over it, I do want to mention we have 2 representatives from the company here. So Danny Deese, who's the Chief Operating Officer, who's based here in Chattanooga, and then a board member who I'm excited to see here. So thank you for being here. So Admiral Robert Natter. So Admiral Natter serves on their board of directors, had a 41-year career in the Navy before retiring as a 4-star admiral. And has been engaged with the company. Just a little background on him. So, because you guys, I think many of you know, I was in Pensacola, Florida before coming here, so big Navy town. So the Admiral served as Commander in Chief of the U.S. Atlantic Fleet, as I think his last duty that he served. And then before that, as First Commander of the U.S. Fleet for command overseeing all continental U.S. facilities, including Navy bases. So very distinguished career in the Navy before coming on board and serving on this board for this company, as well as a few others. So excited to have you here, Admiral. Appreciate your involvement in the project. And so I'll run you through a little bit of the presentation here, and then I'm going to ask him if he'd mind saying a few words about some of the key, I think, really important aspects of this that maybe stretch beyond just Chattanooga. So first, let me start, and if you guys saw some of the release around this, Pure Graphite is a subsidiary of Novonix. Novonix is based in Nova Scotia, and so they have several companies under them around the battery technology space. But for this perspective, the key product for Pure Graphite is basically the manufacture of synthetic graphite for lithium-ion batteries. They currently have 35 employees in Lookout Valley. So they are an existing company, but they're a small existing company in Chattanooga. But we happen to have 2 of their C-level executives here in the community. So both their chief operating officer as well as their chief technical officer are based in Chattanooga, which is a good sign. And the company will be creating has created a holding company, which will actually own the real estate when they acquire the Alstom facility. So there'll be another entity. So when you see the documentation around this, this is very similar to what's happened with a couple of other past projects. So the HomeServe project, the real estate is actually owned by a separate entity. The same was true with Amazon. So it's relatively similar from a risk standpoint for both of those, that they have separate entities that own their real property, if you will. So, and the last thing I'd mention, just from a growth perspective, is that they will continue to grow the Lookout Valley facility as well as the Alstom facility as part of this project. We view this as a strategic opportunity for Chattanooga. And I think the company can maybe speak a little bit more to this as well. But this was a highly competitive project for us. So when we're looking at projects and the potential to invest, we compete against other communities, both across the Southeast, but around the world. As Jermaine mentioned, a pretty significant amount of foreign direct investment. We've lost projects internationally. If you think about the Audi project that went to Mexico, they looked in Chattanooga, right? So we compete at a regional level, but beyond that. And the next thing I'd say is that this company is really in the early stages of a global trend towards electrification. So if you think about what Volkswagen is investing in around electric vehicles, but also what's happening in the energy storage space with companies like Tesla, which has Tesla roofs, right? They go on your roof and you have a battery storage capacity that sits in your garage. So this is really, this project represents an investment in the very early stages of a significant economic trend. And so we like the fact that the potential for that is to happen in Chattanooga. The product also mitigates kind of the reliance on natural graphite, which is mostly mined in Asia. So this gives a U.S. component to that, and I'm hoping the Admiral will speak a little bit to that. And then it fits into a target industry for economic development for the community. So we're very focused on clean technology. And if you think about the solar sector and you think about electronic vehicles, right, this fits into that, and it also really fits into the culture of Chattanooga. If you think about the history that we've gone through as we've moved away from significant air pollution. Big picture, the project represents almost 300 new jobs, a little more than 150 million in capital investment and average wages of $42,000 a year. And I'll run through a couple of key components for the pilot agreement. The first is this would be a 10-year agreement that you have before you. There's a window which is flexible for the company to be able to choose when that starts within a 5-year window. And so that typically we have about a 3-year window for most past projects. This gives them a little bit more room on when that pilot agreement would start. The abatement schedule falls in line with exactly what Mr. Freeman presented earlier. And then it's also important to note that pilot agreements only determine the percentages that are abated. And so there's not necessarily a dollar value. And the reason for that is we're not in control of what that real property and personal property gets assessed at. So that's done by property assessor. And so the company doesn't really have control of that. They do know what they're going to spend, which is that 150 million capital investment I mentioned earlier. And then there are clawback components to this agreement. So in the case of noncompliance, the company doesn't reach at least 80% of the job and capital investment goals, those kick in. And the way that is structured effectively is that if there's a 5% miss beyond that, then they're paying 5% more than they would have in the pilot abatement, right? In the tax abatement. So effectively, it creates a balanced approach. If they do what they say they're going to do, it's not an issue. If they don't, then it's just an automatic increase in what the tax impact would be for the company. A few you've seen an economic impact analysis. I think you've got that, but kind of the nuts and bolts of what this looked like from a dollars and cents perspective. So city taxes abated are roughly 2.8 million for just city taxes for the company. Pilot payments over that 10-year window would be about 5.7 million. And then economic development fees paid to the city are about $650,000. In addition to kind of the property tax piece, which is what that top portion is, there's expected 180 million in direct wages and benefits. So that's directly from the company over the course of the 10-year pilot agreement. Or I think we've given a kind of an estimate on that. And then non-direct jobs, which basically means that there's a multiplier effect when a company hires a position, right? So they get paid that salary and then that salary gets respent in the community. And so when that salary is respent in the community, it creates additional jobs. So non-direct jobs added grow the impact to 370 jobs in the community. And those wages associated with those non-direct jobs over that pilot period are a little over 200 million. So for combined cost benefit analysis for the city and county, it's roughly $6 generated for every $1 that's abated in incentives as part of the project. I want to cover just a little bit about what the wages look like inside the company, because while the agreement calls for a $42,000 average wage, it's broken out into a couple of different, I would say, kind of tranches. So roughly 60 to 70% of the positions that will be created will be entry-level operator positions. And so those will start at $18 an hour. That's the bulk of the workforce. There are a few positions, so less than 5%, that fall closer to $16 an hour. And if you think about material handlers, potentially forklift drivers, those kind of positions would be a little less than that. And then 20 to 30% will be engineering, lab techs, and corporate administrative positions. So there's a pretty significant base of employment as part of this project that's at a higher income level that comes along with that. But I think for us, those entry-level positions as operator positions, the opportunity is really that with training, that's an entry-level position for folks who have a high school diploma. A couple of other components that were added to this agreement that are a little different, and Mr. Freeman kind of mentioned this earlier. One was a commitment and good faith effort around recruiting local employers. The second was around utilizing local contractors as far as subcontractors, whether that's construction phase or that's other purchasing that happens inside the company. And then the last is working with our workforce partners, folks like Hamilton County Schools, Chattanooga State, around helping develop a talent pipeline for the project. And so again, the goal in economic development, when you kind of really dig in to economic development and why communities do it, the really personal reason is because we want to make sure that we have places for our children, right? Over the long term, we want our kids to be able, if they want, to come back. And so when you create, when you have companies that are creating jobs, that creates opportunity. And so that talent pipeline for us is really important. And we think we have a good partner in Pure Graphite around that project. So with that, before maybe I take some questions, Admiral, if it'd be okay, if you'd maybe touch base on a couple of things that you think would be valuable, that'd be great.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here. Most importantly, Danny Dees is our Chief Operating Officer. He hails from this part of the country, Tennessee. The most important part of my biography, though, is not 4 stars. I started out as a seaman recruit, E1, and that was part of my best education. And after 41 years, 16, 17 years ago, I decided to get into the business world and have been. One of my very first clients was Governor Bush down in Florida. And I was helpful in getting Navy Federal Credit Union located there, and actually Pensacola. Started out with about 25 jobs. It's well up over 1,000 now. They have a campus fully committed and by great employees down there. But that's a great example of how I learned of this kind of a program. The why Chattanooga? Quite frankly, we looked around the country. Texas has a big battery plant planned for there by Tesla. This part of the country, Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee, have a lot of automobile factories, and certainly the presence of other companies around the automobile and electric vehicle industry. Chattanooga really appeals to us for the first and most important reason is great workforce here, and it's a great community to live in. I'm originally from Alabama, and I've always admired the river up here, and certainly the city and the community itself. I think Mr. Dees is a great example of what we're talking about, and we look forward to being here in a big way and becoming great neighbors. Economically and business-wise, Chattanooga is very important to us, and I think a great asset, and drove us into our decision to prefer Chattanooga. And that is, number one, the waterway from the Gulf Coast, where we would get our precursor material for this anode material that we would be creating synthetic graphite from. Secondly, the railhead right here in the highway system, and the fact that TVA has the least expensive, cleanest energy in the country and potentially in the world. TVA, we will consume a lot of electric power. We've got to use electricity for our process because it gets us up to the temperatures we need to deal with. We take coke material from the refining of oil, and instead of turning it into waste. We use that to create synthetic graphite. That is about as clean as green as you can get. And we know that we can compete with the Chinese, which produce more than 80% of synthetic graphite today. Where do they get their precursor material? From the southern coast of the United States, because it's the cleanest oil, the lowest sulfur content oil in the world, along with the North Sea. And we would be the first company to get into this anode material production in the United States. So we know we can compete. We know the market is totally off the charts. We would not be able to satisfy the market here in the United States probably for 10 years, even with our most aggressive projections. So we're anxious to make Chattanooga part of this story. It's awfully important for our national defense. It's certainly important for the future of electric vehicles and electric power storage in this country. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll pass the hard ones to Mr. Dees. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first question, I've got a couple here, if you'll bear with me. First question is for Ms. Madison. Daisy, the fees that are paid to the city, the 652,536, does that just drop into the general fund? How is that categorized? And is it used for anything specific earmarked? And that's a general question for pilots.
The fees that are paid by the pilots are deposited into the Industrial Development Fund.
The lease fee?
The fees that, yes,
Okay,
and only the pilot payment amount goes to City General.
thank you for that answer there. The next question is, when will we go, expected to go online if the pilot is approved? What's our next steps?
Before Mr. Dees answers, we will also, there is also a requirement that the Industrial Development Board also vote on this, which would be July the 12th. I believe that's a Monday, because the Industrial Development Board will not meet this coming Monday in observance of the 4th of July holiday. And then in terms of the company's schedule, I'll turn that over to Mr. Dees.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just to clarify your question just a little bit, do you mean full operation?
Sure, yeah,
when we're
let's
starting?
let's say the IDB goes through IDB just fine. What's the next step for you all?
So the plans currently for the old Austin facility, which I'll refer to as Big Blue, it's easier
Yeah.
that way. We have a lot of the building upgrades to do in order to get ready for equipment. That is scheduled for about 4 or 5 months. We'll actually have equipment hitting the ground, if all goes well, by October of this year, in which I'm an operations person, but and so I follow the equipment. But the way that our process works, our employees or our labor will also follow the equipment as well. So we'll actually have employees on the ground working equipment in November of this year, all the way through installing equipment through February of next year. It will slow down just a bit because of the manufacturer of our equipment is highly specialized, and so there's long lead times. But you'll see it start to pick up mid 2022, and then it will really take off towards the rest of the year of 2022. We'll be at full operating capacity in mid 2023.
Great. In the hiring process, do you use temporary agency, or will you be conducting like a hiring fair on site? We've seen that. We've asked that same question to previous pilots. And I think Councilman Byrd advocated for that very strongly in his district. That worked out well for folks to come and talk with you all directly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do not use temporary agencies. So what we do, no one else is doing it in the country. And so it's very difficult to find someone with experience in running this specialized equipment. And so the requirements for entry-level employees are dependability, high school education, some mechanical inclination, and we can teach them to do the rest. And so one of the things that we're really excited about and working with, and I can tell you that when I think about how much tonnage I have to produce and how many employees that's going to take, that it keeps me up at night. And going through this process closely with Charles and a few of the other council members, one of the things we're most excited about is the possibility of branded institutions through local high schools in Chattanooga State. It's one of those things, and I told Charles this a few days ago, that I really believe is a win for everyone. And I think those types of situations are rare. Being from Chattanooga, I understand exactly what type of positive impact that could have, especially if I was able to come straight out of high school and have a $40,000 a year job. That would have changed a lot for me. But not only that, being able to have a pipeline of employees when I'm needing 25 employees a month for the next 3 years, having them be able to come in and be trained and be productive immediately is something that I think for us is extremely advantageous. And so we are moving forward with Charles on some of that as the council votes on all of this and this project moves forward. We'll also have job fairs as well, for sure.
Well, I appreciate what you said about building that relationship and getting into our school system and providing the training, because that's something we were talking about just this afternoon, workforce training and skills. And I appreciate your commitment and you mentioning that on the forefront because it's critical as we move forward to raise our levels. And I think that I'm seeing that you're already thinking about that. And I appreciate you bringing that up. The last question we get, and we get comments and from folks in the city, has it passed the but-for test? So the question that, and this may go to Mr. Wood, is we have to always ask, would this happen? Would this project go forward or would it not happen if it didn't pass that test? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Chattanooga. I left briefly. I served in the Air Force for 6 years and I came right back. So while I have strong family ties here, as well as deep loyalty to the city, what I can tell you is that our board of directors, my CEO, does not have those same loyalties. And when they asked me, hey, where's the best place to put this? I said Chattanooga. Number one, because I live here. Number two, because what we do requires an extraordinary amount of power. I think Admiral Natter mentioned that we will consume a lot of power. What actually is going to happen over the next 10 years is if this project goes forward, we will eventually become the top consumer of energy in Tennessee. I've been working very closely with EPB and TVA on these numbers, and it's pretty astounding. So we have the low power rates here. You also have a lot of available power. We also have a good labor pool here, very friendly to business here in Chattanooga. And so they told me to start looking other places as well. So there are traditionally low power rates other places. And after I get past that, there's a couple of very specific requirements that our equipment needs, which is number one, floor space, a lot of floor space, and number two, ceiling height. And so while you can find a lot of floor space, I would challenge anybody in this room to go find a lot of floor space with greater than 20-foot ceiling heights. So we need about 65 foot of clearance.
And you've got it there, I know.
Exactly. And so when I looked at the surrounding area, we came across two facilities, one in White, Georgia, which is just northwest of Marietta, with the available power and the ceiling heights. And we came across another facility in Huntsville, Alabama, which keeps us close to a lot of the distribution that we would like to see to be centralized through a lot of these battery plants. We also looked in Arkansas, we looked in Louisiana, we also looked in Buffalo, New York. To a lesser extent, Buffalo, which you would think Niagara Falls there, where they would have some really cheap power, but we beat them by a mile. But Arkansas looked good instead of Louisiana. So when we looked at these other places, we were within, let's say, $10 million of having to do building upgrades to the certain facilities that we were looking at. And so everything kind of fell on Chattanooga. But again, like I said, my board of directors doesn't have the loyalties that I have, and nor should they. And so when I go back to them and say, look at all of the incentives that Tennessee, as well as the city and the county came through, how badly they want us in Chattanooga, that provides great incentive for us to be here. Not only that, and I think I'm allowed to talk about this. I'll go ahead.
Go ahead. It's all you, bro.
We are not stopping at Big Blue. Let's put it that way. So currently, the United States consumes about 300,000 tons of graphite per year for batteries. Our plan for the Big Blue facility is to get to 10,000 tons per year, which doesn't even make a dent. That serves one client. So us expanding into Big Blue has an enormous impact on whether or not we decide to build a new facility in this same area. We are looking at it right now. And this facility would be built in a modular fashion and would immediately be capable of 3 times the amount of production. In Asia, currently, they are adding 30,000 tons of capacity per year. And so we have to keep pace with that. Now, employment will scale. So if I need 300 employees to make 10,000 tons, it will scale at a little bit higher number just for administration and logistical staff. So you can say it would scale at a factor of 1.2. So at 30,000 ton facility, which we are planning currently to be online by 2025, would be about 1,000 employees. And this is something that I told our board of directors and our CEO. If I've got to manage 2 facilities in one place, I certainly don't want to manage 3 facilities in 2 different places, right? So I can only be in so many places at once. And so it would go a very long way to calling Chattanooga a hub of synthetic anode materials that are world-class in quality and also cost competitive with Asia, as well as bringing that critical resource to the United States, and all that happening right here in Chattanooga. And so by the year 2030, the United States is projected to consume about 700,000 tons of graphite. Our projected numbers are to be about 150,000 tons by then.
Fantastic. So in closing, I want to thank you for your answers, because I'm feeling like you have fought for Chattanooga.
I have.
I really
Very
do.
hard.
And I appreciate that, because I think that through this project and looking at it and talking with Mr. Wood, we're not only growing an opportunity to grow our economy, but we're growing opportunities that we have craved and we talk about at council continuously, and the opportunities that are there. And I love your commitment to get into our communities and help us accomplish the goals that we have set. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to stop there, and I've read the numbers, and that's all I have. Thank you for your service,
Thank you.
Admiral. Thank you for your service. If that hasn't been mentioned before, and I will yield the floor.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, I've got to leave. I've got an international individual here who's spending 2 hours taking a look at our plant. I've got to get there.
Yes, you do.
We're not assuming anything. We're asking for the support of this council. You've got a fantastic business development team here. They've been very cooperative. Danny was insistent on Chattanooga. He's the fighter in the ring. I'm just ringside supporting him. I think it's a great idea. We look forward and hopeful that we can work here as great partner and neighbors in Chattanooga. And if you don't mind, I need to run. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral.
Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jermaine, this is a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is payment in lieu of taxes, and I was looking at your tax chart, the abatement,
Yes, ma'am.
and just for clarification, is it the abatement when I start paying taxes the second year, the third year? Is it based at real value that year, or is it based on the original taxes?
It is based on real value that year. So it is based on the actual assessment of the property.
Okay, and
Yes.
if it's gonna take till 2023 or a year or so, you figure that we can absorb whatever that loss is, that's been looked at?
Well, yes, I would.
Because revenues have been down because of COVID.
Right. I probably would not characterize it as a loss, because if we don't get the project, then we wouldn't have it anyway. But what I would say is there is a 5-year, the company has the option of a 5-year period up until the pilot starts, during which time they pay 100% of the property taxes that they are expected to pay. And then after that, that's when, once the pilot starts, once we agree on when that date is, that's when the 0%, 25%, 40%, 50% will kick in.
And when are you looking at the pilot starting?
So they have a 5-year window. So if it's approved today, then they have between now and 5 years from now, so between now and 2026, to let us know when they would like for the pilot to start. But 5 years is the maximum. And as Charles mentioned, it is not uncommon for us to have a ramp up period for pilot agreements. Typically, what we see with pilot agreements and with companies is a request for a 2 to 3 year ramp up period. But this is a bigger project than most of the projects that we see. To be candid, this is a $150 million investment. We have not seen a project of that scale in a while in terms of the capital investment that's required. So aside from Volkswagen, which was of course a $1 billion investment and counting, $150 million is a lot of money. And so that affords a longer runway to ramp up.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great project. And I fully back it. It's for clarification. So technically they could pay the low rate, whatever those taxes are, for 5 years and then start the 0 and ramp up. So it's a longer period than 12 years, right?
No, it's 10 years. The pilot itself is only 10 years. And during the first 5 years, they will pay 100% of the taxes that they owe. And so if they begin to,
which is unimproved taxes, right?
That is the
the value is now unimproved.
It is unimproved, but it is also the new taxes on the equipment that they acquire in the next 5 years.
Okay.
And it is also the new taxes on the building improvements that they make within the next 5 years. So that is, so if there is an increase in the assessment, which there should be, because they are ramping up, then they would be responsible for paying those taxes.
That was my question.
Yes,
once they start improving, the taxes do go up.
They do.
And so they would pay that in full until they say, look, we want the pilot to start.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that all, Councilwoman? You good?
I'm good. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Freeman, I really appreciate you answering all of my many questions that I brought forth last week. And also within your presentation, I appreciate the fact that the administration is making it very clear that transparency and a real vision for Chattanooga is integral to how we'll be moving forward with future pilot considerations. A nearly $400 million investment in our community is a remarkable opportunity to be in front of this body. I do have just a couple questions for Mr. Dees, if I may.
Sure.
Specifically around what your company's commitment is to research and development, knowing that you're at the forefront of a growing industry. But what keeps going into my mind is VHS and beta.
Mhm.
So talk me through how Pure Graphite's going to make sure that it's VHS.
So we started out as a research and development company.
Okay.
It was just myself. Our CEO now, Dr. Burns, started a company in order to build better battery testers. I don't know if anybody remembers the original Nissan Leaf, which was very breakthrough technology, but what they didn't understand about lithium-ion batteries is how they performed at temperature.
Mm.
And in order to do that back then, you had to test batteries for months, even years. And so what Dr. Burns developed was a way to be able to test these batteries and very, very specifically test them in order to get that testing time down to weeks. That was the origin of Novonix, as well as during that time, as they were building batteries and testing them, they saw a very large need for graphite, which the world right now does not have. And so that's why they started Pure Graphite. Now, what they did was they hired me. I was a project manager in the industrial mechanical construction field, and I worked mainly in the glass container industry. And so I had experience with high heat operations, which is what we do at Pure Graphite. And what they handed me was, this is what we want to do. Please figure this out. And so we went through about 2 years worth of failure. It was very difficult coming from the construction world. Your career is based on your successes. And so I had to learn how to fail. We failed incrementally and finally came out with a good product, sent that out into the world, and was able to get that qualified within 6 months. And why I say that is typically in the battery, especially the lithium ion space, material qualification takes about 2 years once you send that out to battery builders. We were able to get our material qualified within 6 months. Now, having vertical integration like we do with Novonix, we're able to send them the material we make, and they make batteries. They test them. They tell us whether it's good or not. It's a very unique situation as far as graphite producers go. Usually you have to send that material off to laboratories. They don't have their own material analysis wing of what they do. We do all of that in-house. And so before we ever send it out, we know whether it's good or not. And so when we test our material against the other known battery grade graphites in the world, all of them coming out of Asia, we're outperforming them by orders of magnitude. Not only that, we looked at the Asian process of how they traditionally make graphite, which, by the way, is extremely inefficient and terrible for the environment. We took their process and said, not only do we think we can do it better, but we think we can do it in a way that we can do it cheaper and still make a profit. And that's what we did. So we took their process. We took about 80% out of their process, most of which were the inefficiencies and the parts that were open to atmosphere. And we were able to develop a process that is cutting edge. And I know this might sound a little like grandstanding, but we are breaking technical barriers as I speak. It was actually, while I really wanted to be here today to talk about what we do, because it's been a secret for so long, it was difficult to pull me away from the facility over there in Lookout Valley, because we literally are today breaking a technical barrier. It's something that we do every single day. We live and work right on the edge of what is thought to be possible, and we push those boundaries every single day. So I don't know if this council knows, but we received a grant from the Department of Energy to develop what we call our third generation of furnace technology, which will be coming online in October. This is the first of its kind in the world. It's never been done before, and proven to be successful. It would put the United States in a position that not only puts us head and shoulders and years ahead of the competition, but also puts the world in a better place as far as lithium ion batteries, battery storage, electronic vehicles becoming a primary energy source in the future. It's going to make that possible here.
Thank you for that. That's really exciting. And I don't know if and when you'll ever offer tours, but I would love to take one if I can get security clearance for that.
So over the past several weeks, I've joked with my staff that I've become the highest paid tour guide in the city. So anytime.
Well, we did joke about the dog and pony show that Jermaine was going to bring, and I suggest he bring a miniature horse because everybody loves miniature horses. One other question related to the environmental friendliness of this process and the efficiency of it, because I think people will want to better understand that. So you said that when you're at full capacity and adding capacity, that you anticipate you'll become the #1 user of energy in the state of Tennessee. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. So, and tell me again, because when the admiral spoke, I didn't hear it quite correctly. What is your base material? It's a recycled material, is it not?
So without getting too much in the weeds of what this is, basically the refinery industry produces a waste byproduct in granular form that they either sell back to the steel industry. They use it for fuel, which they burn it.
Okay.
Or they feed back into their own process. We take that it's a petroleum coke is what it is. We take that product, we process it. We get about 70% yield on the initial process. The 30% waste that we produce goes through a process that's known as agglomeration, and we introduce that back into our final product. And so we have 100% yield, close to it, 99.7% yield on the petroleum coke that we use. And then we have 0% loss in our furnaces. And so the Admiral mentioned that we have some of the highest purity, highest grade petroleum coke in the world, made right here in the United States. And currently we are exporting that to Asia. They're making it into graphite and selling it back to us. And all the while putting all of the volatiles that are cooked off of the product into the atmosphere. We don't do that.
And so that's part of how your process is cleaner because of this 100 or 0% loss in furnaces.
Correct. So we're able to combine several steps of the process. One of those steps is a controlled atmosphere, in which we have to use inert gases in order to inert our furnaces, which those gases are pulled out of the atmosphere, argon and nitrogen. And we have spent and are spending millions of dollars in scrubbing technologies in order to make sure that what we take out of the atmosphere, we're putting back in it. And that is all that we're putting back in it.
Okay. So our fellow Chattanoogan's are not going to be getting a bellowing smokestack sitting along the river. This is going to be a clean plant. Going back to being the largest energy user, and this is my final question, for our constituents, help me understand how being the largest energy user also allows you to be a efficient, clean company. You see, because you know how people are like, do you know how much energy it takes to make a battery? You think you're in an electric car and you've saved anything?
So one thing, and I'm not an
Y'all heard
electrician.
that.
I will admit that up front. I'm whenever it comes to electrical engineering, I hand that off immediately. But one of the things that working with TVA and working with EPB, one of the things they're looking for is constant load on their system. As power goes, they work on peak demand. They also work on maximum demand. And in order for them to be more efficient, they have to have a stable load. That's what we provide for TVA and EPB. Our equipment runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it always runs within a very small percentage of fluctuating power. And so this is not only helpful for their load, but it also allows us to be efficient with the power that we use.
Okay. All right.
I
Thank you.
just-
Thank you, Chairman. Woman.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because we just want to be mindful that we have another committee, Parks and Public Work, with great questions. You good, Councilwoman? Are you good? Yeah, thank you. Those questions to be asked too on the tour.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilman Lefford, do you mind if we go to Chip Henderson first? real quick? Chairman Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council, many times we're asked to consider the but-for test. But I think in this situation, we need to consider the what-for test. And the what-for test is to reduce our dependence on foreign energy. And I think it's amazing that we have this opportunity to do it here in Chattanooga. And I think this is just the beginning of being able to reduce that dependency. And I think the cutting edge technology that's coming online is going to be incredible. And I think we have a unique opportunity here in Chattanooga to be able to be in the forefront of that. I'm used to calling you Danny, sorry, Mr. Dietz. Thank you for being here today and welcome to our council. The 300 jobs that you mentioned, that will all be considered at the Big Blue, correct? And then you're going to add more jobs out at the Lookout Valley plant as
Absolutely.
well, is that correct?
And one thing I will say to this council, my executive director is not here anymore, so he can't get mad at me. As we go through, I've been over at Big Blue a number of times, dozens of times, and I don't know if anybody's ever been over there. It's a huge facility, and walking that facility is exhausting. But as we are going through and understanding what that building is capable of, what we're understanding is that it is capable of much more than we thought initially.
Good.
And that only means more jobs. And so 300 to me personally, and I don't want to speak for our board, is a conservative number.
And when we're talking earlier about developing a pipeline of talent, we discussed the possibilities of partnering with the high school out in Lookout Valley, or are those talks moving forward, and how is that looking?
Yes, we are. Yes, they are. In fact, I have a meeting with the principal of Lookout Valley next Wednesday.
Okay, good. Madam Chair, I think that's all my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize. I had one follow-up question. I think we've covered the but-for question. The last time we did a pilot at Big Blue, we didn't have correct clawback language, something that we talked about last week. And I think Jermaine or City Attorney, can you assure us that we now have adequate clawback language so that we can assure the public that we have covered those bases?
Yes, there is clawback language in the agreement in terms of the job creation numbers, the capital investment, and in the event of a project closure. So that agreement is that language is all in the agreement.
Very good. And that's on the record. So we can put that one to rest, that question as well. So
Yes,
Madam
sir.
Chair, thank you.
Good, thank you. Councilman Byrd.
Not Jermaine. Sir. Could you come up for a second?
Mr. Dees.
Yes, you can't hear me? Man, open them ears. Okay, question. Okay, I know Councilwoman Hill asked about just smells and the energy that it's going to impact. Everything's been truly positive. But definitely when I go back to my community and to people that I talk to every day, they're going to have a billion questions, and they're going to do their research and try to find out every negative bone that they can find about this company and things that may impact the community negatively. I know everything is not perfect. I understand that. Can you assure that this company using so much energy and the work that it's doing, that we're not going to have any environmental impacts where this community will have a lot of smells coming from you can't sit out there. We have a lot of development going on when it comes to our hotels. You're right there by our riverfront. Our riverfront is developing tremendously. We have a lot of industry where people are building and stuff right there on our riverfront. And, I would like to see a lot of them go and see a lot more developing and stuff of housing and things of that nature. And people are going to say that.
Mhm.
So what would you have to say about the smells and the things and the impact that it definitely will have on the community when it comes to this building?
I can say this, if you know that we're there, then I'm not doing my job.
Okay.
So like I said earlier, what we pull out of the atmosphere, which is argon and nitrogen, are colorless and tasteless and odorless. That is exactly what we're putting back in.
Okay.
And everything else, which again, we start with an extremely high purity material. And so there's very small amounts of impurities that we are cooking off. All of those get captured with state-of-the-art, highly engineered scrubbers. We are a very large part of our capital investment is in these scrubbers and the maintenance of these scrubbers, as well as complying with the air permitting that we're going to have to go through with the city of Chattanooga.
Okay.
And so I can tell you that if you've been to Lookout Valley, we're making this material right now. And if you haven't smelled anything in Lookout Valley, then we're doing good. We're doing our job.
Smell it on chili. Smell chili.
Go ahead, Charles.
So one other component to that I think that's important is the current owners of the facility have an additional 50+ acres adjacent to the site, and their plans are for mixed use development around that. And so from their perspective, they're looking at exactly that. They've been through the facility, so they kind of understand that. So as they're looking at what are long-term plans for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of, I think, residential, office, hospitality development, there is a comfort level there also with this project.
The jobs creation, when it comes to the jobs, I've seen where a pilot has been brought to the city that we're going to create 300 jobs. And I also see where a lot of employees come from other facilities. And so those jobs start to get filled up. We're still going to create jobs. We're going to have more jobs. And then they say these people have to go through all these strenuous tests and have to get certified and get these certified certificates. And so while y'all are working on those certificates, we're going to go out here and hire some more people. Now you have a lot of transplants coming into the city, and our people are still saying, hey, if we get all of this, where are the jobs for us?
Well, I can tell you that the facility in Lookout Valley is not closing. That will remain open, and those jobs at the facility in Lookout Valley will remain. All the positions at Big Blue will be new, as well as the jobs that we're providing. While the name says operator, these are highly technical positions where physical labor is about 10 to 20% of the job. And so all of the movement of the bulk powders is automated, and the only time that they are getting into physical labor is small and is not strenuous. What these operators are doing is making sure that highly specialized equipment is operating within a very specific range of parameters and how to adjust those parameters. And so as the United States grows in this industry, and we will not be the only ones to figure this out in the United States. What they will be learning with us operating this equipment, they will be able to take throughout the entire United States and work wherever they go. Not only that, but our material analysis side of what we do and our R&D side of what we do is highly technical as well. It's all technical. And so what we are providing in the way of jobs is not backbreaking labor. It's just not. Mhm. Not difficult. No, it's like I said, what we do is so highly specialized that trying to find someone with manufacturing experience has not worked out for us. We tried that in the beginning. And so what we said was, we want somebody who is driven, and dependable,
Mm.
we can teach them the rest.
You good, Councilman Byrd? All right, any other questions? Well, I'll just thank it. Is your name Mr. Dees
Yes.
or Deeds?
These,
Dees.
Yep.
Okay, well, why you laughing? Well, I just want to say thank you for coming and presenting to us. I'm glad that you all chose to come move down in Chattanooga area, Battle River front. Not sure if you're aware or not, but there's a federal prison out in California that does the exact same thing with lithium-ion batteries to try to tackle, the electric vehicle market. But so that leads to my next question is with background checks. Like, will there be room, or would you be willing to at least consider hiring convicted felons?
yeah, yes, I'm very open to that idea. I've been talked to about that before. It's been mentioned to me before. And I see absolutely, we've spoken about this as my staff and I have spoken about this previously, and have had really no reason to move on it too quickly, as we're still pretty small. But moving forward, we want to have programs such as that, as well as for veterans as well. And I see absolutely no reason why we wouldn't consider that. I'm very open to that idea.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions? All right, that'll be it for economic development, and we're gonna go over to Parks and Public Works Committee.
Welcome to Parks and Public Works. Yes,
Second.
we have a representative there. All right, good job. Madam Secretary, can you read ordinance, Madam Clerk? Sir, can we ordinance first reading, 6A?
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 14, Article 2, Division 3, Section 1475, application for examination required, contents and qualifications, in Section 1481, licenses and certificates required, and Chapter 24, Article 1, Section 24.1, and general definitions, intelligent transportation systems.
I see no hands. Resolution 7L.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to approve change order number 1 final for First Place Finish Inc. of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, relative to contract number R200172001 Summit of Softball Complex Improvements from the Easter Tornado 2020 demolition and removal for the decreased amount of $2,614.25 to release the remaining contingency amount of $3,000 for revised amount contract amount of $27,213.35.
I see no hands. You read M, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to close out project for contract number R200172009 Summit of Softball Complex Improvements from the Easter Tornado 2020 foul pole replacement with River City Athletic Fields of Saudi Daisy, Tennessee, to release the contingency amount of $5,000 for a final contract amount of $54,400.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Donald, this is the project we had to rebid, correct?
I'm not sure about the rebid on this one, the foul poles. I believe we added something to this versus a rebid. And
You
this
can,
is,
you can get back with me
Yeah,
on
I was
that
gonna say,
offline. I know we had to come back through the process because of
Mhm.
some technicalities with the vendor. So you can get with me offline. We're good.
okay, I
Thank you,
vaguely
Chairman.
recall what you're talking
Thanks. 7N, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to award contract number S21001201 Cannon Avenue Drainage Improvements to Thomas Brothers Construction Company, Inc. of Hickson, Tennessee, for the contract amount of $297,600 plus a contingency amount of $30,000 for an amount not to exceed $327,600.
See no hands. O, please.
A resolution to amend resolution number 30758 so as to correct the contractor name to reflect Potter Roofing Contractors LLC of Chattanooga, Tennessee for the award of contract number E19011202, blanket contract for roof inspections, repairs, and maintenance.
Okay. No hands. P, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to award contract number W21001-201, raise and lower manholes for Tennessee State paving projects to Professional Concrete Finishing, Inc. of Chattanooga, Tennessee, for the contract amount of $145,500 plus a contingency amount of $15,000 for an amount not to exceed $160,500.
Okay, no hands. Madam Clerk, Q, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into a joint funding agreement with the U.S. Geological Survey and the City of Chattanooga to operate 7 continuous real-time streams gauges located on North Chickamauga Creek, South Chickamauga Creek, Chattanooga Creek, Mountain Creek, Wolf Lefter Creek, Lookout Creek, and Friars Branch for the period beginning April 1, 2021 through March 31, 2022, with a contribution of $10,875 from the USGS and $89,625,000 from the City of Chattanooga for a total cost of $100,500.
No hands. Madam Clerk, R, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for Department of Public Works to award contract number S200120101, professional services for the City of Chattanooga Hamilton County Water Quality Monitoring Project contract to Wolpert Inc. of Columbia, South Carolina for a contract amount of $285,000.
Madam Clerk, S, please.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 2 for Tally Construction Company, Inc. relative to contract number T20002 for construction services associated with citywide resurfacing for an increased amount of $1,016,100 for a revised contract amount of $10,383,224.48.
No hands. Resolution 7D, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to approve the change order number final for Factory to You Fence to Knox Inc. of Knoxville, Tennessee for contract number R2001728, Summit of Softball Complex Improvements from the Easter Tornado 2020 fencing replacement for a decreased amount of $17,670 to release a contingency amount of $12,000 for a revised contract amount of $95,230,000.
E, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to award contract number W21002-201 manhole rehabilitation blanket contract for year 1 of a 3-year term with yearly renewals to Video Industrial Services, Inc. of Birmingham, Alabama, for the contract amount of $259,251 plus a contingency amount of $26,000 for an amount not to exceed $285,251 for year 1.
F, please.
A resolution authorizing the City of Chattanooga to apply for and if awarded, accept a 2021 congestion mitigation and air quality improvement grant from the Tennessee Department of Transportation for an amount not to exceed $3,025,000.
Any additional questions or concerns? Okay.
I'd like to just have a response to Councilman Leffert. I guess why I was confused is this was a closeout, so we didn't have to rebid the closeout. We're closing that. We had to rebid the shade structures. Okay, no problem. All right.
Okay, the updates. We have the updates on the grades for the water damage at the Coolidge Park. Yeah,
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
the grades for the water damage at Coolidge Park. the drainage.
It's an update.
So is that separate from Councilman Bird's question from a week or so ago, or is?
Oh. that
Oh,
is it.
I already
Yeah,
addressed
yeah.
it personally, but the city attorney is here as well. The information I received is that we did narrow down the grates, but the water does have to go through. But from a legal standpoint, we have posted signs that you must wear shoes and you participate in, I guess, getting wet at your own risk.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? Concerns? What's the pleasure of the council? Let's adjourn to 6. What did I say?